Okay, welcome back. We're on page 140, talking about how I accidentally made a vertical inside a vertical. Although that's perfectly legal, it's certainly not what I had in mind. If I go to attributes and I change the orientation to horizontal. Okay, cool. Now, right this very second, how come I only see the text view, I don't see the edit guy? What could possibly go wrong? And first of all, how did this occur? Well, because I placed them first and then changed it, so it kind of messed it up, right? So let's just go look at this first one. So the first one says, match the parent for the width. And this one says, match the parent for the width. They can't both be matched parent because they're on top of each other, right? Okay. So I'm going to change them both to fill, okay? Not fill, wrap. Okay, so I'm going to change that one to wrap, and I'm going to go to this one and change it to wrap for the width. Okay, so now we have these two guys. Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to apply some weights to this guy, what way they are now. Now, this is confusing, so just bear with me for a moment. This is a subject of tons and tons of Google searches. If you ever poke in, how come my weights are working backwards? If you Google that, you'll get tons and tons and tons of stuff that explains what's going on. So let me just help you out. Let's say, for example, I wanted it to be 40-60. Like 40% was going to be for the text view and 60% was for the text edit. Okay, let's just say that's what I want. Cool. All right, I can do that. I'm going to go to text view. Hey, I'm going to use the search guide one more time because I'm going to do, so I want to do weight is what I want. So layout weight. And so this one, I want to make this one 0.4. Cool. And then I go to this guy and I want him to be 0.6. Okay. Cool. That should make this guy so that the, let me get out of that. So this guy should be 40% and this guy should be 60%. Does that look right to you? Does it look like we're actually doing 40% over here and 60% over here? Does that look right? Doesn't, does it? It looks more like 75 and 25. So whenever you're using weights, you have to basically tell the machine, look, I am now responsible for figuring out how wide things are. You don't get to do that. So you have to go to each one of these guys, like the text view guy, and tell it that the layout width is nothing. So 0dp is a way of saying, not my job. Well, not your job, it's my job. So then I go to this guy, and I change him the width to 0dp. And then afterwards, it'll actually look like it's supposed. Now that looks like 40% and 60% to me. Okay? That's a little confusing because sometimes it appears as if the weights are kind of backwards or something. So the way you work it is you change the width to tell the machine, don't automatically resize this at all. Instead, use weights. Now, to me, personally, I think this is a bug. I would have thought that if you put weight in there, it should automatically have overridden the width. That's just what I'm saying. But that's just not the way they did it, so whatever. Okay. Now, if you're doing table, in a table thing, you may have to have weights, a separate set of weights. One for each row, okay, in the table. Remember the table layout guy? And so, in addition to having a layout weight, they have a thing called weight sum, which means I'll take all the weights of the rows and sum them together. So let's say I had a tic-tac-toe board and I wanted, 0.33, 0.33, 0.33, then the weight sum would be 1. Okay, it's just an extra thing you have to do when you're using the table layout. Okay, let's talk about gravity one more time. So there's two different types of gravity. One type of gravity changes where the thing shows up. Okay, so I'm going to add me. I guess I'll just add a button. Okay, I'm going to grab a button and drop him on here. Now, to tell you the truth, I don't want him in there. I want to scoot him over so he's lined up with this guy. Now, what happened? Why did this thing consume all of the width? Because perhaps... Now, just out of curiosity, I'm now clicked on the button. And so I tell the button that I want it to wrap the content. Well, is it wrapping the content? It certainly doesn't look like it is. So there's a conflict between the layout of the container and the layout of the button. Now this is kind of confusing because you would think whichever one was the last one would have precedence. You'd think. But I'm going to have to go to this guy and say I don't want the height to match the parent. I want it to wrap the content. Okay, and now it behaves. Okay. Even though this guy said wrap content, okay? So yes, it is confusing that these things are in there and they're stacked on top of each other and sometimes it appears like they're ignoring you. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to do gravity, which was the whole point of all this. If I go here and type in gravity, so there's a layout of gravity, okay? So I'm going to put center, apply. Ooh, so that moved the entire button. Cool. That kind of makes sense. And then I'm going to use gravity in here, and I'm going to say I want the gravity to be, I want the top left. Now you can't actually see it, but what happened is the text inside moved up. Not much, but moved up a little bit. Okay, so one more time. This gravity, oh, I want it top left. Okay. Huh. Okay, whatever. Oh, yeah, I guess it's there. I just can't see it. Yeah, there it's top left. Cool. Anyway, so this gravity determines where the text is, and this gravity determines where the button is. Kind of makes sense? Okay. And what happens when there's a conflict between nested controls? It doesn't actually do precisely what you might think it's supposed to do. Okay, moving along to page 143, they talk about using a scroll view. Now, a lot of things have changed in the book since the book was printed, so some of the instructions are not going to work. We don't get the options, for example, they show on page 144. And so this is kind of a setup on how I do things. So one more time, I'm going to go in and change I'm going to blow this layout away and start over again with a brand new layout. Okay? Now, before we do that, let's talk about what the heck we're doing and why. Because why is a heck of a lot more important than mechanically doing it. All right, here goes. Let's just pretend like you had like a form you were filling out. You know, you filled out a gazillion forms when you're buying stuff, you know, where you got your name and address and zip code and blah, 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 blah. And then maybe your credit card number and expiration date. And it's a big, long form. Well, if it won't physically fit on the screen, like there's a button down at the bottom that says, you know, add to cart or, you know, process payment or order, confirm or some button, right, you have to click. You won't be able to see it necessarily on your device because maybe your device has a physically different size than what you designed it for. So a scroll view is a safe choice for doing practically any type of layout, so that if for some bizarre reason, you know, your perfect design that you've fixed and you've got it exactly the way you want it on the designer, if somehow that doesn't work on the device, you can at least scroll up and see the whole thing. That's what a scroll view is for. Now let me give you a little bit of history lesson because this is kind of an interesting topic, at least it is to me. There used to be a thing called a recycler view. Okay, first of all, it's a horrible, horrible name because it has nothing like to do with like a recycle bin or anything. What that meant, let's assume like you were creating an e-reader for a book, okay? And so as you scroll through the book, right, pages come into view and disappear off into view. the recycler view would, as soon as something disappeared out of the view, it would release the memory associated with that. Okay, so that it only used, so you may have 1,000 pages in your book, but it's only, in memory, you only have like maybe 5 or 6 pages in memory at any one time, and the machine would automatically do that. So the scroll viewer is a grown-up version of this horribly named recycle viewer that does the same thing. As you scroll through something, now, I mean, you'd have to scroll a lot, but in theory, you could scroll a lot and then come up with something where it would come up and say, I'm going to release the memory for the pages you've already seen, and I'll start allocating memory for the pages that you have not seen yet. Okay, so that's the purpose of this guy. Okay, cool. So, once again, I am not following the instructions in the book at all. I'm going to go back to the project. I'm going to click on this guy. Actually, I'm going to close this guy out. Not that you have to do that. I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, delete this guy. Once again, this is not how the book does it. And then I'm going to go here and I say, I'd like a new one. And it's going to have to be called the same thing. It's called activity main. Except my root element now is going to be a scroll view. Scroll view. That's going to be my guy. Now, scroll views are pretty doggone cool, but they do have one rather bizarre limitation. And that is, a scroll view can only have one child element. Okay? So that child element dang well better be a container, right? Okay, so after you get a scroll view, you're going to need to put a container in there. So let's just grab a normal container, like a linear layout or a vertical one. Let's do a vertical one. Okay, cool. Now, when I drag and drop this thing, Hunter, you can kind of sort of tell. Well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Can you tell if this guy consumed all the space or not by just looking at it? What do you think? Let's just go look. Let's go look and see how it did. It got matched parent for the width and matched content for the height. Well, I don't have any content, so it's that tiny little sliver line at the top. Okay? That to me is okay. Now, it will make it dang difficult to drag and drop something onto the design surface, right? That would make it tough. But you can drag it and drop it onto the component view all day long. Okay, that kind of makes sense? All right. So this is a interesting tactic that you would use. It's safe to use this on every application that you write, just in case the thing doesn't work out the way you expect, the layout doesn't work out, and you can't see everything. Okay? Kind of makes sense. Now that we've got the thing going, I'm not going to do everything in here, but one of the things they talk about, they have a couple of cool things that they do. One of which is they want you to drag and drop some photographs on images onto your surface here. So one of the things you have to do is you have to go get supplemental materials, and then you can download this little zip file and drill through and find chapter 5 and go on through and find the res, and I guess it's a drawable. There they are. And so you would light these guys up and then do basically a copy and paste kind of operation. Okay, that kind of makes sense. So switch back to our guy. Okay, I'm going to go to my MIP map folder, do a right click and do paste. Now it's going to try to put it into whatever folder that the current designer is using, and it looks like it's going to be the extra high definition guy. That's fine. It doesn't matter. And then it says, would you like to do that? By the way, I mentioned to you guys before that the names of these files must be in lowercase. So if you were copying and pasting files that were in uppercase, yeah, that would kind of sort of cause a problem. Okay, we're at the 15-minute mark, so you guys know how this works.